This is a Viking Emerald sewing machine that we will be using in our class to sew our sewing projects. There's some things that I want you to check before you start to sew on the sewing machine to make sure that all the settings are right and this machine will sew properly. So the first thing when you sit down at a sewing machine, what you want to do is you want to make sure that you plug in your pedal to your machine. So on the right side of your machine, there's a little connection area where the pedal, the white cord, is plugged in. Then we need to plug in the power cord, which is the black cord that plugs in right next to the pedal. Make sure that when you plug in your sewing machine that the cord is behind the machine and it's not in anyone's way where someone can trip. We also have the on and off switch on the right hand side of the sewing machine. The next thing that we want to take a look and make sure that the setting is correct is the stitch length dial. This is the stitch length dial. Make sure that this little nub right here, this white nub, is lined up with the dot that says between 2 and 3. So we want the stitch length to be a standard 2.5. The next dial that we're going to take a look at is our pattern selector. So our pattern selector is this button here, this dial. Now the dial tells you what type of pattern the machine can do. We want to make a straight stitch. So in the orange, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different types of stitching. The pattern that we're looking for is just a straight stitch, number 1. So you're going to go ahead and select your pattern dial to read number 1. Following your pattern dial is your stitch width dial. Now this dial up here tells the machine how wide or how loose, how narrow we want to make our stitch. We only want a straight stitch. So right here is the indicator and we want it set at 5.
Your tension dial should be set at 4. This tells the machine how tight or how loose to hold the top thread. Your tension dial should be set at 4.
And needle clamp nice and tight. Then you're ready to thread your machine. Your sewing machine needs 2 threads. It needs a spool of thread and a bobbin thread. Every spool of thread has a thread holder. Now this thread holder is where you would place your thread so that it doesn't unravel. Your thread holder is very important so that you don't have thread just all over the place. So whenever you're storing your thread and you're done with your sewing, you always want to put the thread in the thread holder. Now, your thread holder is also very important because when you're threading your machine, you want to make sure that the thread holder, this little slit right here in the thread holder, is on the inside of the spool pin. Now, if it's not on the inside of the spool pin, what will happen is the thread will get caught on the thread holder and it'll cause lots of tension on your machine. So you want it on the inside here. As the thread comes out this way, it's not going to get caught on the thread holder, creating tension and causing your needle to break. So please make sure that your thread holder is on the inside. We're going to take our spool pin cap and put it right on top of the spool pin. From there, we're going to take our thread and we're just going to put it into this little thread guide here. So you slide it in, it comes down through this channel here and back up over to the right hand side of this next thread guide. We want to loop it around, pull it down so that it goes into this little hole right here. Now, if this thread guide is not at the highest point sticking up above your sewing machine, what you need to do is you need to take your hand wheel, which is on the right hand side of the sewing machine here, and wind it towards you. Watch what happens. The needle goes down, it comes back up if I keep winding towards me, and now the thread guide here is at the highest point. That means that the needle is at the highest point. So if we don't see this on our machine, we can take our hand wheel, right side of the machine, and we only want to wind it towards us, so that if the thread guide is hidden, we can wind the machine and it will come back to the highest point. From here, our thread gets taken behind this little latch here. So it sits nice and tight inside next to the needle. I'm going to turn my sewing machine on so that I have a light. And now I can thread my eye of my needle by taking my thread and threading it through. The thread comes from the front to the back. Then what you want to do is you want to pull the thread so that there's about 3 inches to the left side of the machine. That is your first spool of thread. The second thread that the sewing machine uses is called a bobbin. This is a bobbin. So your bobbin needs to be sit into the machine with the thread coming off to the left-hand side. Now what I'm going to do here is there's a little button that we need to pull. So you're going to pull it to the right, and the throat plate, this plastic throat plate, will come off. So you're carefully going to take the throat plate off, and I'm going to sit the bobbin into the bobbin case here. Once it's sit into the bobbin case, what we need to do with our right hand is hold the bobbin so that it doesn't spin. With our left hand, we're going to go ahead and take this thread and pull it so that it goes in through this first slot and out through the second slot. So you want to hold the bobbin here. You want to pull the thread nice and tight so that it locks into place here. The thread that's coming out of the needle, you're going to hold with your left hand. You're going to wind your hand wheel towards you so the needle goes down and back up. You know the needle is at the highest point when this thread guide here is sticking up at the top. I'm still holding on to the thread that's coming out of the needle, and when I pull it, it loops the bottom bobbin thread. I'm going to pull out this bottom bobbin thread. I have both threads underneath by my presser foot. I'm going to carefully put the throat plate back on by sliding it in here and pushing it down carefully. Now I'm ready to sew. Now we're ready to sew. We're going to practice on paper first. So we're going to take a piece of binder paper, fold it in half, hot dog style, and you're going to place it underneath of your presser foot. Now, your presser foot has a little lifter. So you're going to take your right hand, stick it through the machine, and right above here, there's a little lever. What you want to do is you want to grab onto the lever, and you slowly want to place it down so that it doesn't slam. What it does to your presser foot it allows it to raise up so that you can slide something underneath, and then when you're ready, you can carefully lower the presser foot so that it goes down and the edge of the paper stays on the edge of the presser foot here. You can just move these threads off to the left-hand side of your machine to take it out of the way. Then what I'll do is I'll take my hand wheel, wind it towards me so that the needle goes down into the paper. Now, on your sewing machine, we have a little speed indicator here. Your speed indicator will allow you to go maximum speed or very slowly. Once you get used to how to control the pedal, the pressure on the pedal, how to push your paper or your fabric through, you can then start getting a little bit faster. You're gonna hold the paper with your hand. You're gonna press down on the pedal that's on the right hand side of you with your right foot. Carefully, you're gonna hold onto the paper and you're gonna make 3 stitches. You're gonna press down on the pedal very lightly so the needle goes up and down 3 times. Once that happens, you're gonna let the paper go and you're gonna press on this reverse button. And what that's gonna do is it's gonna allow the paper in this case or your fabric to come back at you. So you're gonna press down on the reverse button. You're gonna hold the paper with your other hand and you're gonna press down on the pedal so that the paper comes back at you. And what that does is it secures a knot inside of your paper. Now this thread here, you just let it go. Let it move wherever it wants to move. You're gently gonna guide the paper so the edge of the paper is on the edge of the presser foot. Looking at the edge of the presser foot on the edge of the paper, just like that. Again, we're gonna let the thread go. Let it do what it wants. We don't want to hold on to it unless it's gonna tear our fabric or our paper. When you come to the end of your stitch, you're gonna go ahead and press the reverse button. So now the paper is gonna come back at you. And that just secures the stitch for 3 stitches. And then you can do another 3 stitches forward. Lift up your presser foot lifter. Carefully pull off the paper from your sewing machine. You're gonna cut the thread, and now we have a straight stitch, edge of presser foot, edge of paper.